The next session will be a very interesting conversation on digitalization of the Ghanaian economy. For this session, Mr. Maxwell Ampong, the CEO of Maxwell Investments Group. A round of applause as he comes.
Thank you very much. The best MC in town. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome once again to the Ghana Economic Forum 2021. My name is Maxwell Ampong. I will be your moderator for this panel. I work with Maxwell Investments Group, affiliate of Blackmore Investments, and the aim of this panel is to talk about impact. I want to come in another angle. We are trying to see if a topic such as the digitalization of Ghana's economy with respect to e-currency, electronic payment systems, and it's being a critical vehicle for promoting economic growth and development. When we want to talk about such a topic as critical as this, we mean digital leadership of a person, an organization, or as a country. We will be delving into how prepared the country is at the launch of our central bank digital currency. And again, this panel will be about impact. There's a popular saying that says, that goes like, if you want to dwell on statistics, it wouldn't go too far. That's why I would want to repeat again, this conversation will be about impact. Some of these questions might be challenging. I need to be upfront with that. But I believe that is why the Ghana Economic Forum has been set up. It has been set up to ask the difficult questions. It has been set up to provoke debate. And I believe the first panel that we had is evidence of that. So I will dive right in and introduce our distinguished panel. In our midst today, we have Mr. Kwame A. Oppong, the head of FinTech and Innovation for Bank of Ghana. Can we give him a round of applause as he joins us? Thank you for joining us, Mr. Oppong. We have Mr. Ammishaddai Owusu-Ansah, the Commissioner General for the Ghana Revenue Authority. Thank you, Reverend. We have Mr. Akyeampong, the Chief Transformation Officer of Fidelity Bank Ghana. Then we have Mr. Nanaya Owusu Banahene, the Country Manager of AZA Finance. We have Mr. Andy Akoto, partner at KPMG Ghana. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Andrew. Last on our list is Mr. Ankit Tandon, Director for Regulus Investments and Financial Services. If you go to pages 21 and 24 of the Business and Financial Times today, the lineup has been quite laid out there. Why? Because we wanted to give our distinguished panel the opportunity to view the questions beforehand and prepare impactful answers for us. There will be no curveballs. They know all the questions beforehand. We will ask them 2 questions each. We shall listen to the comments from 2 organizations, that's Impact Markets and the Refugee Integration Organization and the World Economic Forum, we will give up to 3 minutes for each panelist to give us a closing remark, and I would give a vote of thanks, after which the panel shall come to a close. Again, no curveballs, fully all about impact. Let's dive in. I believe my first question is to Mr. Oppong from the Bank of Ghana. We have heard about the oncoming Ghana Central Bank Digital Currency, the ECD, and I believe we've read some articles about it. My first question to the distinguished gentleman is, what is the ECD? I have CDs in my pocket right now, I have CDs in the bank, you have as well. How different is the ECD from the money that we have in our pocket and at the bank right now?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to speak on this issue. We've had several questions around what the ECD is, and I think for the purpose of clarity and distinguishing it from the different types of, particularly I think it's been confused with some payment services, ECD is a central bank digital currency, which really is a dematerialized version of the currency notes and coins that you have today. So you have notes, you have coins, then you have a digital version, which is a central bank digital currency. Every country would have its name for it, but really, as a broad category, this is what it is. Often, it sometimes gets confused with mobile money, payment apps, etc. It is not a payment product. Just as cash plays a role today, some of you go to mobile money agents and you give them cash, they load your wallet. You put money in place in enabling transactions within this economy that as a central bank, in anticipation of what our function will be in future, particularly as we actively and aggressively embark on a digitization effort at a national level, it is important that we also reassess and evaluate what the role would be for cash and for currency. Certainly, it doesn't bring the benefits of efficiencies that we hope for, in addition to many other things. And so we began to take steps to test the feasibility of an ECD here in Ghana. And I think there have been subsequent announcements as to how it's going to be implemented, or the pilot will be carried out. But let me make a few points about this whole effort. One, we expect that it will have some benefits from a financial inclusion standpoint. Two, we expect that it would introduce some level of efficiency in operations, both for us as well as for the private sector, including commercial banks, payment services, etc. Three, we expect that it would also serve in this space to be able to develop solutions leveraging ECD. This is how central bank digital currencies work. There's a myriad of benefits around it, but there are some important benefits that we see. Finally, I think most countries that have tested the wholesale version of that have also, for instance, noted the efficiencies that it brings when it comes to interbank settlement. So there's a lot that an ECD, or a central bank digital currency, brings to the operations of a central bank, how it enables and facilitates transactions more effectively, and ultimately how it drives innovation and inclusion. So the ECD is a very, it's a very simple concept that really we see it being part of the future. Now the question is how you make sure that it's implemented in a way that consumers, not just here in Accra, but from every part of the country, even in areas where there's no power or no connectivity, can use it, because today you can use cash even in environments without power or connectivity. So those are all things that we're looking at, and hopefully you get a chance to also test them at some point.
In my younger days, whenever I'm stopped in traffic, I always felt like, hurry up, I want to go home, But now I find that with the oncoming central bank digital currency, I would like to ask Reverend Owusu-Ansah, how does that affect to avoid tax evasion?
Thank you very much. It's not easy. Much more when I've made the decision, the actual paying of the tax should not be made difficult. And that is the reason why any opportunity and any instrument and any system that ensures that it makes the payment of tax easy is something that, as Ghanaian Revenue Authority, we are very, very much interested, and we'll make sure that, because there are three things that it does. Number one, it makes the convenience and makes the payment of the tax less tasking. And number two, it also eliminates the leakages that exist if there are too many manual interventions in the process of paying the tax. And number three, it makes ensure that you are able to mobilize as quickly as you can and know the position. One of the things I always talk about is the fact that if I drive 20 minutes, let's say from somewhere in the city to Aburi, and I get to the toll booth, and I have to spend 15 minutes to pay the toll. It's not the paying of the 2 cedis or the 1 cedi, but the 15 minutes I have to waste at the toll booths to pay that 2 cedis. And so it comes back to the point I'm making, that any system that gives us an opportunity to make the tax paying convenient and easy. I'll give you an example. What do you call it? Teller cubicles. And we had about 4 tellers per an office. And all over the country, we had about 250 to 300 tellers. And their duty was for you to come and queue, and then you collect the tax. You pay by check, you pay by systems to the down wharf, and then subsequently to the taxpayers and to all the 23 banks. Today, if you enter the Ghana Revenue offices, you see all the the teller cubicles empty. And people can sit in their homes, in their offices, wherever they are. It's one major thing. And when I talk about the three things that happens, I say one is convenient. So now there are no queues in our offices. There are no tellers in our offices. I mean, actually, we are retraining the tellers so they can go out and then collect more money. So I talked about the fact that it also gives the efficiency for you to bring in more money. So now that through leakages, if you have a system like what we had, where you have to come there and pay the tax, and you present your check, every office on the average has between 2 to 5 million return checks every month. Checks that go, and then they are, the banks will say they are bounced or they are dead or whatever it is. Today, we have killed for once the issue of return checks, because you have to pay at the bank. It clears before we take the decision that you have paid the tax or you have not paid. Previously, you drop the check and then it says you have paid. So when after 3 days the check is returned, then we are now looking for you. I want to talk about, so the convenience as far as payment is concerned definitely provides convenience for tax paying.
Well said, Reverend. Thank you very much. My next question goes to Mr. Andrew Akoto. For me, digitization, actually all the way up and all the way down. And if there's any industry that has done this and experienced this to the max, sent home to work from home or any part of the world, tens of thousands of their workers. It's why I would want Mr. Andrew Akoto to let us understand, how do you reduce the cost of transfer, and what do we think that the central bank digital currency will do in terms of the cost of transfer of information?
Okay, so thank you very much. And just as my earlier panelists have indicated, this whole ECD or digital currency is novel. And we look forward expectantly because, like you said, in the accounting profession, we've already traversed these routes. I do recall when I started my career, we used to fumble with all, and this could take you anywhere from a few weeks to even several months. Now, because all the information is plugged in digitally and information is generated based on preset business rules and configuration dynamics, at a click of a button, you can get your financial statements. And what I also see with the digital currency is likewise, where we are going to reduce the whole flow of payments and settlements and obviously the reconciliations that follow. If I pick something from what Commissioner General said, if for nothing at all, it's going to make all of us very honest. I mean, just a few weeks ago, a business partner tried to deposit money in my account, and it returned. And it went in about 3 times and got back. But this time, if I'm dealing with such a person and the person says the person is settling, it takes effect immediately. That is, if the funds are there. It's not a question of insufficient funds. I mean, because it's one ledger to the other. Okay, so one could really expect to see a more efficient, a faster, real-time transaction taking place. We are made to understand that there is a wholesale digital currency, there is a retail digital currency. So, I mean, for day-to-day ordinary customers to these financial institutions, once the instruction is issued, it should be possible to reflect immediately because everything is taking place in the digital space. And at the end of the day, I think it will keep our businesses flowing throughout the day, practically 24/7. I mean, how many times have we tried to close a transaction and then say, oh, the banks have closed. Let's wait and then do this the following day. Okay, so what I see is a situation where we are able to, navigate all the challenges in the payments chain and also save some money. Because what I'm told is that obviously we also spend a bit of money with printing all these digital currencies. So it is transformational and we have to be open-minded and embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew. The issue of checks, I believe I have just my 2 cents on the issue of checks. I believe I know a few people that with just one check bounced in Dubai, spent a couple times or just a short while behind bars. I've been receiving emails from the Bank of Ghana. Their information dissemination efforts has been quite extensive to guide us to know exactly how to work with checks, how to make sure that we write checks when we have the money, how not to write checks that will bounce, and most importantly, the penalties that come with them. We would need to have a mixture of incentives combined with, of course, the fear of going to jail. I believe that most people as well were more afraid of paying that 10%. I know people that really complain about the 10% when their check bounced, and I think it hurt them more than the fear of jail time. So once we can understand that in Ghana, the fear-mongering works to an extent, but it has to be combined with some incentive or negative incentive, which the lack of the deduction of a 10% of a check. I can tell you a lot of business partners really did suffer from that or did complain from that and then deterred from writing bad checks. So that's just my 2 cents before I move on to Mr. Banahene, who owns a business, AZA Finance. He's the country director for AZA Finance. I'm sure most of us here are businessmen as well. I would like to ask him what a central bank digital currency means to him or the average Joe in the business, the larger business community of Ghana.
Thank you. So the company is AZA Finance, and it's a global company. I think I'll talk about CBDC, which is a known concept. ECD is not yet launched, so I will not want to talk specifically on ECD, but I know it will be on the same pattern. The benefits for businesses in terms of implementing the CBDC is enormous in terms of few things have already been raised with regards to settlement. And for businesses, that's one of the things that affects the effective progression of their business. And let me give you key examples, right? You have a company that turns around 100,000 Ghana cedis to buy goods and sells it to different retail outlets. And at the end of the day, they have to pay them back. When they are doing the normal cash check, it goes to the banking system, it takes 2 days, Sometimes they may be lying or all those things. With an ECD, you don't have an excuse. It's not sending an instruction to a bank. You may have a channel that you can just go there and send whatever payment you have to send to the supplier. And then this will enable most suppliers who are not able to also meet their demand or the obligation they have with their key supplier from outside Ghana to pay them their money back quickly and sometimes spoils the relationship. This is going to take it off, right? On the side of merchants, you can easily receive ECD as a legal tender, right? There are other currencies which people are propagating about, which is not a legal tender. ECD is technically like the normal CDs in digital versions. So you can immediately receive ECD as a legal tender and not worry about the genuineness of the amount, the currency you are receiving because it's backed by the central bank. So from a merchant retail perspective, which in Ghana, we are not there yet in terms of retail merchant payments. We've done a lot of improvements from a transfer perspective, but in terms of retail merchant payments, we are not fully optimized yet. ECD gives the confidence to the merchant to say, I'll receive this payment. There are certain merchants, when you go to them in Ghana now, when you mention a certain mobile money, vendor you want to pay with, they don't want to accept it because sometimes they have challenges trying to get their money back. So the ECD resolves all this problem. I don't think merchants or businesses will struggle accepting this currency. And also settlements by them, and general settlement in terms of wholesale settlements. You cannot do business 24/7. So businesses that have high value amounts that they pay, and sometimes you have to wait till the next day, and it's an emergency. With the ECD coming in, you can be trading, you can be doing business 11 p.m., 12 a.m., and then you don't have any challenges. So it's going to really spur up in terms of business activities, allow it to flow, and that's what I think will spur the economic growth generally of the country. That's what I want to say.
Great answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Banahene. Shall I give me a round of applause? There's no way we can talk about digitalization without mentioning mobile money. And that is why I'm asking the gentleman from Fidelity Bank Ghana ahead of Mr. Kwasi Akyeampong. Using the mobile money as a case study, what has been the biggest impact of mobile money transactions on business, let's just say on the general business community?
Good morning or good afternoon. I don't know what time it is now. We were very late, but it's okay. I think I would like to set the context from where COVID took us. Mm-hmm. So if you think about COVID-19, it was a forcing function to accelerate the whole mobile money. Now, what's interesting is that if you look at the factors that drove it, it was more about you had more registered accounts, more transactions going through mobile money. Even though people thought the diasporans will be losing their jobs, so internal remittances will slow down, we saw an increase in that. Merchant payments went through the roof because people felt cash was challenging to handle. So we saw more people do a lot more online payments. Now, that's the backdrop. I'd like to take people to a little history lesson here and talk about M-Pesa and bKash. M-Pesa is one of the most successful mobile money markets, which is in Kenya, and bKash is in Bangladesh. What is very interesting, if you think about both mobile money markets, the challenge we had there was it was going to solve a problem, which was to do with the unbanked and the underbanked. Now, it was an African solution. Again, another point to make is that back in 2007, when M-Pesa was being rolled out, you could actually take a cab ride in Nairobi and pay with M-Pesa. However, if you were in New York and London, it's in a yellow cab or a black cab respectively, you have to use cash. So you realize that I think mobile money, as we see it now, we need to start looking at Ghanaian-based solutions to fix our problems. Now, what are advantages that we see? We see gender gap has been bridged because we now have more women in the space where they get access to financial services. We now also see cashless payments, which allows us to pool data to look at how we can service the customers a bit better. And from a Fidelity point of view, we have a WhatsApp banking application now called Kukua, where it allows us to reach a lot more of different types of customer segments, which is very important for us. We talked about the merchants. Purchasing online goods is now more secure. You can use a multi-factor authentication to do that. But there's some drawbacks as well that we have to worry about with mobile money. As we all know, there's now cybercrime as a service out there, which is a bit of a challenge, right? The dark web is filled with people who are looking for ways to penetrate this market. But again, there's some solutions that I think the Ghana government has recently signed a cyber security threat, which I think was signed last year in December. And there's some ways to go to sort of combat that. But in terms of what we see from a banking perspective, we do see that there'll be a lot more products and services being put on the mobile money. We do see it will attract more of the financial inclusions, i.e. the segments. And more importantly, given that the young people are not very tech savvy now, and what they tend to do is screen time in the young people is going up by about 50%. So we see that the products we have to create for the Generation Z and Alphas have to be more discerning and more savvy. So I see mobile money definitely giving a bit of a run for its ride when it comes to ECD. It's not going away anytime soon.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Ankit, you're next. Mr. Ankit has run a very successful business for close to 2 decades in India. He's been all over the world. I found it best to ask him, can you let us know how the transition from cash to digital has gone on in other parts of the world? Where has Ghana reached in the journey, and how far do you think our current trajectory will send us?
Yeah, thanks, Maxwell. And first and foremost, thanks for having me here. It is a matter of great pride and pleasure for me to be part of such distinguished panel. Now on digitization, different parts of the world, they had different objectives associated with it. If we talk about the Western economies, the advanced economies, it all started with eBay, e-commerce. The main agenda was that they wanted to increase the commerce, trade. And then when eBay came, then all the innovation which happened, mostly it was around the merchant transactions. And subsequently, the idea was that a seller should be able to sell to any part of the world and buyer should be able to buy from any part of the world. That really helped. But when it comes to emerging or the frontier markets, the idea was different. Idea was that of a financial inclusion. Idea was to take the banking to the last mile. And why so? So suppose if a farmer is there in some far rural area of the country, he does everything in cash. He buys in cash, pays for the goods in cash. Whatever he makes by business, he gets in cash. And if he has to borrow something, he goes to money lenders, obviously at a higher cost of borrowing. So everything is cash. This is not percolating into the economy. And that was the main idea where this digitization comes into picture. Now let me share some stats here. For the emerging markets and for the frontier markets, only 1 in 5% they have access to the banking channel. And rather few use them. But the good part is almost 50% of those, they have a mobile. So why not use the mobile technology and give them the access where they can use that for making the payments? Now that physical divide, because banks cannot be there, it might not be a fruitful proposition for them to set up a branch there. That can be built with this digital network. And that is why digitization comes into picture. And that is how word has shaped itself. A journey from say one objective to the objective. Now digitization, obviously, the major benefit is that it formalizes the economy. And that is why most part of the emerging worlds, they are trying to digitize most of their processes. In financial world, it all started with payments. But if I can talk about my experience from India, sooner than later, it moved to lending, from digital payments to digital lending. And it opens a plethora of opportunities. Why digital? The best potent tool in the hands of regulators, in the hands of bankers, in the hands of government is data. For an individual account, for the sake of simplicity, what are the sources of income? How frequently do you receive your income? Where do you mostly spend your income? You do rentals more, you travel more. Have you purchased your health insurance? This data is very important. And that is where the future lies. Now, with this data, banks can bundle their products. Banks can sell the, and I'm very sure in few years' time, we'll see a lot of fintechs operating in the space, right from credit profiling, data analytics, to lending, to collections. I'm very sure it should open a lot of opportunities for the economy. Now in Ghana, what I feel is that foundation is there. Foundation is there. If you see gradually your fintechs, digital banks, mobile money, telecoms, all the boundaries are diminishing. They've got blurred. So that foundation which we have in Ghana, we just need to build an infrastructure on it so that we can give a full-fledged solutions to the customers, and effectively economy will grow because you will have all the sections going with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ankit. So are we giving a round of applause for that? He kept repeating that the foundation is there. It is there. I spoke to Impact Markets. They raise funding for low-income communities through easily accessible digital currency. And I asked him, what are some of the biggest roadblocks that mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs face on their digitalization journey? Why? Because they deal with such enterprises on a day-to-day basis. And his response, which is the CEO, Marco Barbosa, is, and I quote, I think some of the biggest roadblocks entrepreneurs face include the lack of policies that incentivize risk-taking, openness to learn new processes and technology, and the proper infrastructure, both in finance, technology, and education. End of quote. The full quote can be found in the Business Financial Times, pages 21 and 24. In line with this, Reverend Owusu-Ansah, I would like to ask, just as Mr. Barbosa said, what are some of the processes, incentives, and policies that can help the digital journey along for MSMEs, entrepreneurs, and businesses at large?
Thank you very much. I think there are a significant number of things that are being done and that can be done to make it possible for MSMEs and individuals. And for me, I even want to add from the government angle itself, because when we talk about the digitalization, we are seeing the benefits from the government angle to the MSMEs and to the individuals, and for all of us as a nation and as an economy. The first session, we were talking about the Ghana card, the Untitled initiative. And we are talking about how we can use digitalization to make sure that people are becoming more compliant. Then you also mentioned in your comments just a few minutes ago about the issue about the checks, and then combining the digitalization and the compliance in terms of enforcement, whether you can go to prison and things like that. What is happening today is that if you have 10,000 people issuing that checks, and you don't have any digitalized way of reducing that number, then it becomes very difficult for you to put the 10,000 people in prison. Right. But if you combine digitalization with the compliance, then digitalization reduces the number significantly and becomes easier for you to pull out the few that are non-compliant and put them in prison. When you come to the element that we have, for example, when we did a Ghana card, we had said that there were about 12 million people that were identified that did not have, are not compliant, but even though they have the register for the Ghana card, as far as tax is concerned. Now, through digitalization, we are able to know that out of this 12,000, there are about 9 million who are eligible for tax. In other words, about 2.7 million from the data are not eligible for tax. Out of the 9 million, you can break down knows that about 60,000 are the high net worth professionals and things like that, which we have mentioned in the public for some time, who also are not compliant. And then you have another 3 million who are low income earners, who also, then you have another 6 million who are middle to income earners. So it is very easy to identify. Today, I can tell you, out of the middle income earners who are not paying, I can tell you which region is leading. I can tell you which region is number 2, which region is number 3, in terms of the number of people who have Ghana cards are not compliant. I can break it down into households, and I can break it down into areas of residence. I can tell you how many people are living in Trasacco and they don't have, they have Ghana card, but they are not compliant. I can tell their telephone numbers, and I can tell their house using their, what do you call it, GPS, because it's all in the data. And I can drive straight to the house. We have done analysis. We know that there's a potential of 8 billion that we can get from these people. And this is what we have broken down into the various offices, and we have assigned them across all the country. So I'm looking at it from the government first, because the SME, MSMEs, and the individuals has an obligation. And therefore, I want to start with their obligation before I come to their rights and what you want to do for them. And so there are a lot of opportunities, and I'm sure that we are on the right path, and very soon, sooner than we expected, we will get there. Now, when it comes to some of the convenience for the, let me start from very small. If you look at our self-employed, those who pay the taxes in terms of personal income tax from the employed, a greater percentage of what we have in Ghana today in our database, surprisingly, comes from people within the transport sector. And for them paying taxes in the previous times, in terms of their vehicle income tax, meant that they have to go to our offices and queue. Today, when we do through the star 222 hash, they can sit in their vehicles and do star 222 hash and pay. And therefore, they don't need to show up in the offices again. And we are moving on to the step where we don't even require, will not even require you to put the sticker there, because currently you finish paying and you still have to go to a bank or somewhere to go and collect the sticker. So there's an opportunity there for them. Now we have also introduced the online filing, and currently, though not many as we expect, but before the beginning of the year, it will be compulsory for every large taxpayer to file online. And then we'll move on to the medium taxpayers, because we know that the challenges are there for the other ones who are far away and small. Again, we are making it across. So if you are able to do the online filing and you are able to pay online, then automatically we remove the opportunity for you even to go to the tax office and then to enter into a situation where these issues about people trying to take advantage of taxpayers in terms of staff and things like that will also be eliminated. So there's a huge opportunity for that to also be controlled. Now, these things that are happening will ensure that as many as possible will have the convenience of being paying the taxes. Now, through digitalization, we are also being able to use the data warehouse to be able to match data. So that, for example, today we have a situation where somebody can be registered with a Mercedes-Benz, and that is registered in his name in DVLA, but at the same time he pays the tax of, let's say, 2,000 or something like that. Then when you compare, and the same person, if you are able to digitalize and have the system talk to each other. There's a data warehouse that has your tax database, you have your SNE database, you have your DVLA database, and therefore you are able to identify. Today there are companies, in fact, and that data also we have, that you see they do send their PAYE to GRA. But if you look at the same company, they have more employees sent to SNET than they have employees sent to GRA. So how come that the person has employees who pay tax and they have who enjoys social security, but they don't pay tax? And so this is also the data matching that we're also doing. So it's very easy. And therefore, very soon what will be coming up is say that, in fact, it's becoming compulsory that you don't submit data to GRA for PAYE without. Anyway, if I want to go on, I'm sure there's a lot of things I can talk. There are a lot of things I can talk about as far as the opportunities for. But we are bent on ensuring that through digitalization, we'll make it easier for SMEs to be able to. In fact, we are also coming out with an app, And I'm sure it's almost about 60% complete, where now filing can be done on your mobile phone by just selecting an options there and filing on the app. And it has gone far as far as this app is concerned. And so very soon, you don't need to actually even walk to the office. You don't need to actually go and look for a computer. With your phone, you can file. So these are very simple initiatives. And once you file, you can pay. And once you pay, you can get your tax clearance certificate, which recently we heard what is happening, on your phone. So you don't need to actually also walk there for somebody to dupe you. You'll be able to get your tax clearance on your phone. So there are a lot of convenience that is coming as far as the individuals, SMEs, MSMEs are concerned, as well as the nation as a whole, to be able to make sure that we increase our tax to GDP ratio, as we were talking in the morning, from where we are. We have moved from 12 to 13, and even in the midst of the COVID era, there's opportunity for us to move further and aim at where our other colleagues in other countries are. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Reverend has exposed so many cracks, or let me call the loopholes, as you call them, in the system, which I believe that with innovation will be fixed, which is what leads to my next question to the distinguished gentleman from Bank of Ghana. That this will be my last question. After that, we take a comment from a World Economic Forum speaker, and then questions from the audience. Mr. Oppong, I am 100% for regulation. In fact, 1,000% for regulation. My fear with overregulation is that it would create black market economies that would allow people to circumvent the protocols and the systems that Bank of Ghana rightly have put in place to protect the stakeholders of Ghana. With all the digitization going on now, at least we are well aware that the US, the West, the UK, Europe is ready and willing to invest in Africa, especially when it's technology-based. I mean, we've heard of Flutterware, Paystack. So boys are wild. Guys are trying to innovate, trying to do stuff. I would like to ask how the Bank of Ghana is preparing the road to certification for these individuals, and how, not necessarily easy, because of course due diligence, of course you have to look at the innovation that's coming up and how it affects what is currently there, but how is Bank of Ghana preparing for these new innovations that are going to come up, especially when we launch the ECD, because then everything goes digital. So everybody's mind leaves the physical and goes to the digital space.
Thank you very much. I think one thing you'll observe over the years is that everything Bank of Ghana has done relating to this space has been by design, has been carefully thought through policy that has gotten to the point where you're hearing some of these results. So you, for instance, had, we make a point about mobile money growth between, before COVID and after COVID. Even during the COVID, I think one of the interventions we made had to do with some enhancements to subscriber wallet balances, limits, etc. We saw some significant uptake in merchants acquiring digital means of collecting payment, and that trend has not subsided. It actually has continued strongly. All through that period, we have not stopped. And so you would, for instance, have noticed that we introduced a new set of merchant account categories, which recognize the fact that if you look at the average merchant anywhere from a market in Tamale, a market in Takrade, a market in Accra, some of the requirements that were in place in the law for them to be able to be onboarded as merchants, if you looked at it, it was a bit onerous. It may be okay for maybe a Kempinski or an organization somewhere mid-range, but it was a bit burdensome to ask that of them. And so we introduced a new merchant account category and the corresponding requirements for onboarding them. That is consistent with the tiered KYC approach within the mobile money space, which, by the way, was one of the first, Ghana was one of the first countries to implement it, and you see this across the sub-region a bit more. We have subsequently implemented several policies and embarked on several initiatives, including the sandbox, where I heard a conversation about Singapore and some other countries. We're working with them on a business sans border, which is a business without borders initiative that connects a financial trust corridor between Ghana and Singapore. Ghana as a hub for our region, and Singapore as a hub for their region as well. There are several things that we're doing. But let me point out this. When it comes to the issue of regulation vis-a-vis investment, let's first understand that so far, how we've evolved policy has wound up in consumers voting with their feet. When the FinTech survey by the World Bank was published in 2018, I think using data from 2017, it put Ghana's financial inclusion number at 58%. At the time, we only had about 11 million mobile money customers. The population was about 29 million overall, and you had about 21 million adults. Now, the recent statistics suggest that we have 22 million adults, and our mobile money is already hovering between 18 and 19 million. So we don't know what the next number will be in terms of the specific number, but certainly we can all do the math and extrapolate and get a sense of how significant the growth has been. And that growth reflects a certain level of consumer confidence. Demand is a very important element to all of this. Now, that demand has been as a result of proper regulation that ensures that you have safety and security and confidence in using these payment services. So mobile money was regulated in the past, in 2008, when we were looking at what was happening in Kenya, and it was interesting, the M-Pesa conversation came up. When that was introduced, we had to modify or enhance our regulatory framework to capture what was happening in Ghana. So there was an electronic money issuer guideline in 2015. We further enhanced it recently with a law that aggregated all the payment sector guidelines, policies, etc., into a Payment Systems and Services Act that addresses all aspects of it. As an investor, just like as a lender, do you invest in something you're not confident in? Do you invest in markets you're not confident in? What we've sought to do is make sure that we have a licensing framework that is robust, but is also reasonably configured to balance the burdens on innovators with the risk that they present. So if you look at our existing payment service categories of licenses, it's structured in different categories, including the smallest license category level, for instance, that doesn't have a capital requirement, but it has certain permissible transactions that are well calibrated to suit the type of risk that they present. Even the requirements for them from a governance standpoint, from a legal standpoint, etc. And then you have the enhanced payments license, for instance, which details, has a bit more permissible activities. We have strict governance requirements for them when it comes to operational risk issues, enterprise risk management framework. We inspect all these things. They go through a thorough process, including an on-site inspection. So by the time we license you as a payment service provider by the Bank of Ghana, investors can have a certain measure of confidence in the fact that you are a well-established company from a legal standpoint, you are well-governed from a governance standpoint, operationally you are adhering to a certain level of international standard efficiency, and the rest becomes how well you're doing on the markets, which obviously is what would have attracted them to you anyway. And so we're really looking carefully at that triad. It's a demand, supply, and from the central point, a policy intervention issue as well. So we're mindful of all of this, and our actions have been clearly designed to intervene, to promote this sector. And so you mentioned some of the acquisition, some of the investment rounds that you've heard recently. You'd be surprised if you look at the Africa-wide investments over the years. You'd see some that are actually Ghanaians. Now, Ghanaians are typically more modest in the PR we do around these things. But we all know a few fintechs here and there that have gotten international investment much earlier. And some of the other ones actually had also started from Ghana before went into Nigeria, but they re-identified themselves as Nigerians started fintechs, right? But the most important thing is we have an opportunity as Africa. This is the next opportunity for growth. Let's be confident in the fact that we know what we're doing, we're clearly thinking through what we're doing, and what we're going is in the right direction. It was so comforting to hear some of these, the comments coming from each panel member. I mean, the examples that Ankit, for instance, shared is no different from what we're doing. The issue of foundation, right? So if you look at what's happening in India, you would go out of maybe Delhi into a small town like a Haryana or something, and you'd see individuals collecting, getting government support, right, in the form of social benefits transfers, and they're leveraging the Aadhaar system. That Aadhaar system is a simple approach to biometric authentication, a single source of truth that if I say I'm Kwame Oppong, it validates that I'm Kwame Oppong. We have a biometric national ID. We have a national property digital a national digital property addressing system, and we have an interoperability system that ensures that we're able to make transactions from bank accounts to mobile money and to eSwitch. We have the foundation. We have certain goals and objectives. We're seeing what the value is. Let's continue to work at this. Let's continue to come together around this digitization conversation, and we can make a lot happen for ourselves as Ghanaians. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oppong. Again, you can read pages 21 and 24 of today's edition of the Business and Financial Times to find all these questions spelled out. And next week, we shall endeavor to have these answers also very well spelled out. Because, again, this panel is about impact. Fortunately or unfortunately, time will not allow us to go deeper. Time, so we will have to move to questions from the audience. Before that, let us hear from the World Economic Forum, our very own speaker and agenda contributor, Okyere. I asked him a simple question, which is that mobile money technology at a micro level of trade and commerce, how does it trickle down into measurable improvements? I think it ties into what some of the panelists have said here right now. And we all know the good work that the World Economic Forum is doing. Here's a very short audio of a response that we got.
My very deepest regards to this forum and its distinguished guests. Now, mobile money technology has been revolutionary. I believe the crux of its impact was in ensuring and safeguarding ease of payments and the availability of cash for businesses and persons within low-income communities. With regards to measurable improvements in the living standards of the average person, the GSMA State of the Industry report for 2019 corroborates the fact that average lives are indeed getting better for it. However, integral questions we now need to ask are, how do we innovate from this point? How do we measure a community's progress out of poverty? How do we measure the kind of impact we want to have? And lastly, and importantly, how do we create robust structures that are sustainable over time? These structures for measuring and managing our overall impact astutely align with SDGs 1, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 17. A real-life example of innovation around mobile money technology is happening right here in Ghana with refugees. The Refugee Integration Organization is giving refugees in Ghana $1.50 in unconditional basic income every day. This money starts its journey as a cryptocurrency and finishes that journey as Ghanaian cedis in a refugee's mobile money account. Now, what's the impact of this? The impact is creating microeconomies in ultra-low-income communities like refugee camps, improving lives, and contributing to the larger Ghanaian economy. With our present economic climate and overall stability, Ghana is very well poised to becoming a beacon in innovation with mobile money technology and merging our social and communal impact with the Sustainable Development Goals. So in conclusion, moving forward, our primary focus should be setting a strategy that defines our target outcomes, integrating our different resources, tools, and processes, optimizing our data collection so we can make intellectually informed decisions, and then reinforcing these structures to deepen their efficacy and governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give Mr. Okyere a round of applause. And with that, I give the audience the floor. The mics, do I send the mic? I think there's a mic coming.
Okay. Good afternoon. My question, it's quick. I want to know the actual place of ECD, which we are contemplating in the payment ecosystem. Is it coming as a competition to the booming mobile money platform, or it's coming as an alternative? Because we have so many innovations coming on now in the ecosystem. We should know exactly where ECD is going to be within the ecosystem. Thank you.
I think we'll take 3 questions at a go. Let's have the gentleman in the gray suit.
Thank you very much. I'm from the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And my question goes to Reverend. As much as we are encouraging our members to go digital, some of them will still want to go to your offices and make payment. But the situation still persists that when they go, your staff still demand money from them before they can issue a receipt for payment. A typical example was just last week. A member went there to make payment, and the explanation was that there was a long queue. So for them to issue the receipt for her in time, she has to part with money. It's still a challenge, and I believe if you can work on it, it will assist the business community. Thank you very much.
Next question, I believe there was a hand here. I would like to give the gentleman. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Mohamed Marzouk from the Office of the National Chief Imam. I'm happy we are discussing impact. The digital currency is a great novelty of enormous benefits. And on the face value, we can identify transparency, honesty, and efficiency as the primary benefits. However, it is equally a great risk and opportunity for fraudsters in the cyberspace if it is not well understood and applied. Do you have in place a mechanism to ensure proper public education on the use of the digital currency? Thank you.
Okay. I believe I should issue a disclaimer that these questions are totally random. The first question had to do, I think, the place of the ECD, if I'm, yes, so.
So with regards to the ECD and where it falls, as you all know, today, whether it's mobile money or any kind of payment transaction, it's all being run on the back of the CD notes and coins that the central bank is issuing. So the ECD does not come to compete with them, it actually comes to enable them. So rather than run an entire innovation of physical notes, you're running it off digital notes. So ECD by itself, I mean, today if I gave you cash, and always think of it this way, as a rule of thumb, whatever you use cash for today, when you hold physical cash in your hand, what you use it for is how you're going to continue to use it. The only difference now is it's going to be a bit efficient. Now let me clarify something here. When I want to send money to someone else and I have cash in my hand, I either go to a bank, I go to a mobile money provider, I give it to them, I either use a wallet, USSD, or some means and send. That is a payment service. So my cash cannot go to a different town by itself. It has to go in that form of being transmitted. So it's important to separate a central bank digital currency from payment services, the payment services layer. Of course, we have endeavored to go the next step of ensuring that our brothers and sisters in the off-grid environments, the frontier-type regions, also have the opportunity to actually do some transaction where there's no payment service. I mean, financial inclusion is limited by the availability of connectivity or power. That's the unfortunate reality globally. And so what we actually hope to be able to do, which we're one of the people pioneering this, is the ECD would actually also be capable of being used in an offline environment through some smart cards. So these are some of the things we'll be testing in the pilot environment, but just generally keep in mind that a payment service is one thing. It's a service that is built on top of whatever currency that the central bank is issuing to you, but the ECD is currency. So there's paper, there's coin, and this is just a digital version, and that's really the distinction. And maybe I also touch on there was a last question about the safety and security and the cyber fraud. This is something we've worked robustly on. First of all, there are different types of ECD. So Andy mentioned, central bank digital currency. So Andy mentioned wholesale and retail. Now, even for the retail central bank digital currencies, there are two types. There's the account-based, which would basically sit with us as a central bank. We open accounts for every one of you, and banks and payment service providers will help you through their apps and internet banking and everything else, spend that money. Or the value-based, which is just like notes today. We move it to the commercial banks, and then they also put in ATMs, they put in bank accounts, they make it available to consumers. Our choice in going a certain route, that value route, was one of the first layers of securing that. What that means is today, there's already a cybersecurity directive. There's a payment law that has so many requirements in terms of security for consumers and consumer protection laws. All of these, the consumer recourse mechanism guidelines, these were all crafted to safeguard consumers from fraud and protect them from abuse. And so when you deploy a CBDC, or in our case, the ECD, in this manner, the measures that you've set for the industry begin to apply. So from that level, that to secure. Now, of course, on the back end, there are several sophisticated mechanisms that are in place to make sure that digital currency is not being double spent. You know, it can't easily intrude into the system and all these other aspects of it. That I won't go too much into it. But I think the other concern that the gentleman may have has to do with something called social engineering. In the end, no matter how sophisticated the systems are, the weakest link can be the human being themselves. If they aren't appropriately trained, if they aren't well, clear in their minds how to use some of these products. I mean, if you listen to one of the mobile money fraud that was mentioned, you would, for instance, here, and someone called me and did this and did that, and I put in my PIN. Your PIN is yours. It's your personal identification number, but people, unfortunately, may not know. So people can use social engineering to confuse them, and they do this. At that point, at the system level, it's tough to stop that. So it's consumer education. So we have factored in a significant element of consumer education in the pilot that we're running. And for that reason, we're actually looking at 3 different segments: urban, peri-urban, and the frontier. So that whatever we do and learn from this, when we finally decide to implement this as a permanent implementation, we know how to train consumers to create public awareness, not just on what it is, but how to use it safely. But as it stands, there are sufficient mechanisms in place to secure consumers at a system level, operational level, and the last leg becomes how you save yourself from some of these unfortunate schemes and scams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oppong. I believe the next question was to Reverend.
Thank you very much, the gentleman from the Ghanaian industry, you said. I must admit that wherever we find such unethical and such unacceptable and such fraudulent behavior, we go ahead to take the necessary disciplinary action against the staff. Last year, I remember we terminated appointment of about 3 staff for such behaviors. And anytime we have such, and then we also want to encourage the public. Currently, we have set up a unit that we call the Tax Audit and Quality Assurance Department, which is completely independent of their normal tax offices. And they are overseeing the quality as well as the giving assurance to the taxpayer. We have been advertising the numbers. We'll keep on advertising, and we want to encourage the taxpayer that anytime you find such an opportunity, or you are confronted with such a behavior, please use the numbers to inform us. It is very important that we also as taxpayers do not condone. I've found a few situations where I've asked people to help me give the data or give the specific information, and then they sort of want to push back. I want to encourage that if you give us any lead, we'll also make sure that whatever protection we need to give to you to ensure that you are not intimidated or find yourself in any other situation as far as the tax officers are concerned will be done. Therefore, I want to encourage that we definitely do not condone, and we have zero tolerance. If we see it, we will take the necessary disciplinary action to ensure that our disciplinary action has actually moved from the places where sometimes they do demotion, transfer. No. If we are involved in such a thing, we terminate.
Thank you very much for that strong answer, Reverend. I believe the answers have been 2 in 3. I feel we should have a space for one more question. Is the mic close to this gentleman? Let me give you my mic just to save time.
Thank you. I've got a multifaceted question. Or what I'm going to do basically is ask it to 2 of you. To the gentleman from the central bank, you've noticed that a lot of the questions have been targeted at you. And I don't think it's deliberate, but there's something to say about what's currently happening in the mobile money space, in the digital space, and how Bank of Ghana and policy seeks to regulate it. You mentioned yourself that you're aware of certain companies that have gone and reinvented themselves as Nigerian companies. Now, if your policy to register or regulate these up-and-coming companies were as soft or accessible as you make out, why do you think they're going to Nigeria? That's the first question, because I think that has been prohibitive, and I have spoken to a few companies myself that are seeking to go to Nigeria to go and register. So I'd like you to kind of speak to that. And then secondly, to the gentleman from Fidelity Bank, I'm wondering how your organization is getting involved in this digital space and what you guys are looking to do. It'll be interesting to hear your opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly clarify something. Great. So I think that entity, for instance, I gave an example of, is licensed here in Ghana. They're running well. They're doing okay. They're doing well. I think we have to recognize certain realities. And this, by the way, is not unusual. I know of an entity that I've known for years. We all know where they started from. Now, recently I was reading about them, and they rebranded as a company that was set up from London. That's fine. Ultimately, business is tough out there, and do what you need to do to get your investments. We have no qualms against that. I think it's a matter of how well are you operating here, how well structured are you, and those are the things we're keeping an eye on. Now, there are some entities certainly who, from an investment standpoint, who will look at a market like Nigeria, will look at a market like South Africa, will look at a market like Egypt. What is their motivation? Addressable market. Is the size. I think we are well regulated as a sector, but we also have to acknowledge the fact that ultimately size of market plays a certain role in an investor's motivation, because that's what you're seeing. What is the growth potential for my investment? And that's why you see that in spite of whatever challenges may be in several other markets, you will see investors still going in. So that's the first thing. You also have to acknowledge something. And I think for us, we're a country of 30 million people. We're doing an incredible job trying to digitize as much as possible, both public and private sector. But we also recognize the need to expand, the need to grow. Our fintechs need to be able to scale beyond the borders of Ghana. And so you may have seen in news, for instance, that some fintechs in Ghana have acquired other fintechs in other countries, or fintechs in Ghana have gone to other markets and are competing there. It fills me with pride when I go to certain countries and I see Ghanaian fintechs operating there. Sometimes the staff from Ghana have somehow moved there and are heading operations there. So this is not unusual. And what we are doing, even within that perspective, from that perspective, is that how we define the operating environment here, the requirements and the standards we hold our fintechs to, carefully balancing risk and the ability to grow, is allowing them to be viewed very positively in the markets they go into, so they are not struggling as much entering there. We're also coordinating with our fellow central banks. It's a standard operating reality that we collaborate and share peer learnings. Ghana happened to have been one of the first markets with the forward-thinking mobile money regulation, for instance. So there are some countries, if I go there right now and I pick their mobile money laws, I can quickly recognize some of the things that are in there. It takes its roots from here. What that does is the companies that are regulated here, when they go there, they already have a head start in terms of compliance. They have a head start in terms of meeting the requirements. So what we are trying to do is help build companies that are built to last, help nurture innovation that can scale not just within the continent, but globally. And for that, I think it's a mission that we're confident in what we're doing, we're comfortable with it, and we're also open-minded for feedback, and we'll continue to improve and enhance our regulatory environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oppong, for your multifaceted answer.
Yes, thank you for that question. We do have a digital innovation unit, which is under the transformation department. We've already had some initial conversations with Kwame and team. We have some use cases we want to test in a sandbox that Kwame has got. And I think I'm going to get Kwame to set up a thematic sandbox which actually focuses on the ECD. Because then we can play in that space, test out product, test out use cases, make sure that we're ready for the market. Now, from a Fidelity standpoint, the partnership with the regulator is going to be key. The partnership with FinTech is well going to be key. And we see technology as a key thing to drive us into the next phase. And we believe engaging with the regulator early to understand how ECD is going to play is going to be very key for us. So to answer your question, we're already in talks with the Bank of Ghana regulatory team. We're engaging with them actively to look at some use cases we can put into the sandbox to play with. I don't know, Kwame, no pressure. Is the sandbox ready?
The sandbox is actually ready. It's operating now. We initially launched a pilot, so we can also internally, initially the idea was to help with our fintechs, but it has to be broader than that. It's for the whole financial sector. So there are certain learnings you pick from that, and then you enhance it, the process. And we've learned a lot, to be honest, from what we envisage. But the ECD actually is currently, there's a sandbox for that. Unfortunately, because it's a control pilot, and there will be some announcements relating to some banks participating, etc. But we have a sandbox in place that would allow some testing to go on. And eventually, before we actually make a decision to scale ECD as a permanent addition to the notes and coins, we will also make that available. But our existing sandbox can actually also run CBDC, so we have both going for us.
Impactful answers right there. Mr. Tandon, Mr. Oppong, Reverend Owusu-Ansah, Mr. Akyeampong, Mr. Banahene, Mr. Akoto, thank you very much. It's been my honor to serve as your moderator for this panel. Thank you to the very eager audience who's been following us since this began. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the organizers of this Business and Financial Times and our sponsors. With this, I say good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the amazing Maxwell Ampong. Please join your panelists for a group photograph. And I believe they've done justice to the topic.
With Mastercard Foundation,
Digitalization of the
Bank of Ghana, Business and Financial Times in part.
What is Young Africa Works? Young Africa Works is the Mastercard Foundation's ambitious goal to enable 30 million young Africans, 70% women, to access dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. In Ghana, Young Africa Works will enable 3 million young Ghanaians to access work they find dignified and fulfilling by 2030. The Foundation's vision for Young Africa Works in Ghana is that by 2030, the country will be a continental demonstration of young people, especially women, harnessing opportunities to shape the future of work and to create an inclusive economy with enhanced resilience for the most vulnerable. To achieve this vision, we are focusing our efforts in the agricultural sector, using a value chain and market systems development approach to enable us address barriers by leveraging digital solutions to enhance productivity, provide access to financial services, and supporting policy implementation to unlock the full potential of the agricultural sector to create work opportunities for young Ghanaian women and men and to strengthen the economic recovery of the country in the process. Building on over a decade's legacy in Ghana, promoting financial inclusion and supporting education, we are working with the private sector, government, other development partners, and young people to create opportunities for young Ghanaian women and men to fully realize their potential and access dignified work opportunities. Together we can. Find out more at www.mastercardfdn.org.